Right now, in a perfectly quiet room, you can hear something no one else can. It's not the TV, it's not the fridge, it's not traffic outside, it's inside you. And it never fully stops. You've probably gotten used to it by now. The ringing that shows up when the house goes dark and everyone else is asleep. The hum that fills the silence when silence should feel peaceful. You've mentioned it maybe once to a doctor or a friend and got the same shrug back. Yeah, some people just get that. So you learn to live with it. But here's what nobody told you. That sound isn't random. It isn't just one of those things, and it isn't coming from your ears. It's coming from your brain, and there's a very specific reason why. What I'm about to share with you isn't the same explanation you've already heard. This goes deeper into the 5 real mechanisms driving that ringing. And once you understand them, you'll never hear that sound the same way again. My name is Dr. Reena. I'm a board-certified urologist with 12 years of clinical practice, and a large part of my work involves helping men, especially men over 50, decode what their bodies are actually saying before it's too late to act. If you're new here, this channel exists for one reason. Too many men are walking around with real, treatable physiological changes happening inside them, and nobody's explaining it in plain language. We don't water things down here. We take the body seriously. Go ahead and subscribe and drop a comment letting me know where in the world you're watching from. I read every single one. Now let's get into what's genuinely happening when your ears won't stop ringing. Most men assume tinnitus is an ear problem. That makes total sense. The sound appears to come from your ears, so the damage must be in your ears, and the fix must involve your ears. Logical, and almost completely wrong. Here's the truth. Your ears don't create sound. They collect it. They gather vibrations from the air, convert them into electrical signals, and fire those signals down a long, intricate biological pathway toward your brain. Your brain is where sound actually becomes sound. Think of that pathway as a wire, a living biological wire. When it's healthy, well-insulated, and richly supplied with blood and oxygen, signals travel cleanly. Sound is sound, silence is silence. But when that wire begins to degrade, when its protective coating thins, when circulation to the nerve tissue tightens, when low-grade inflammation settles in around it, the signal distorts. It becomes unreliable, scattered, and your brain, which is always trying to make sense of incoming information, responds to that disrupted signal by generating its own sound to fill the gap. The ringing isn't in your ear, it's in the wire. And now let's talk about exactly what's happening to that wire. 5 mechanisms, most of which no one has ever explained to you before. Wrapped around your auditory nerve is a substance called myelin, essentially the biological equivalent of rubber insulation around an electrical cable. Intact myelin means clean, accurate signal transmission. Degraded myelin means the signal starts to scatter, fragment, and distort. After 50, myelin breakdown accelerates. You won't feel it directly. There's no alarm, no obvious symptom, but at the cellular level, the insulation on your neural pathways is gradually thinning, and the auditory nerve is one of the first places where that degradation produces something you actually notice. What drives it? Chronic inflammation is the main culprit. So are nutritional deficiencies, particularly vitamin B12, magnesium, and specific fatty acids. Poor circulation means nerve tissue receives less of the oxygen it needs to maintain its own structure. When insulation thins, some signals still get through cleanly, others don't. The result is continuous background interference, biological static, that your brain picks up and renders as sound. That's the ringing, and it lives in the wire, not in your ear. This is the mechanism almost nobody explains, and it's arguably the most important one for understanding why the sound seems to grow over time. Inside your inner ear are specialized hair cells that convert sound vibrations into electrical signals. Here's the critical part. These cells do not regenerate. Once they're gone, they're gone. As some of those cells decline, the signal leaving your ear gets weaker. And when your brain receives a weaker signal, it doesn't simply accept the quiet. It compensates. It actively cranks up its own internal amplification, what neuroscientists call central gain. Picture an old amplifier. If the microphone loses sensitivity, you turn up the gain dial. The signal gets louder, but so does every distortion and imperfection in the line. That amplified distortion is the ringing you hear at 2 in the morning when the house finally goes silent. But here's what makes this even more significant. The neural circuits involved in hearing are in direct biological communication with the circuits that govern your mood, your focus, and your stress response. This is why tinnitus so often arrives alongside a low, persistent anxiety that's hard to name, or a creeping inability to concentrate. Not because something is psychologically wrong with you, because the wiring is connected. This is physiology, not weakness. Most men, when the ringing becomes consistent, do what I would probably do too. They find workarounds. The TV stays on longer than it needs to. A fan runs through the night. Anything to bury the sound beneath something external so it doesn't dominate the room. I completely understand that impulse, but here's what most men never find out. Masking the ringing doesn't resolve the problem in the wire. The brain's compensatory process keeps running underneath, and over time, those neural circuits become more deeply entrenched because the brain strengthens what it repeats. The more consistently your auditory circuits run compensatory sound generation, the more established that pattern becomes. It's not getting quieter with time, it's getting more wired in. Masking has a legitimate place for short-term relief, but masking alone, without addressing the inflammation, without supporting the myelin, without restoring the nutritional environment the nerve depends on, that leaves the root completely untouched. You can't fix a problem by covering it up. Sooner or later, you have to look at it directly. Most people know tinnitus disrupts sleep. The ringing is loudest in silence, and silence, which should be the most restorative part of your day, becomes an amplification chamber for a sound your nervous system can't turn off. But here's the part almost nobody is told. Poor sleep makes the tinnitus worse. During deep sleep, your brain activates a system called the glymphatic network, a kind of biological cleaning cycle. Cerebrospinal fluid flows through brain tissue, flushing out metabolic waste, including the inflammatory compounds that, when left to accumulate, degrade nerve tissue and disrupt the auditory signal. When sleep is fragmented night after night, that flush is incomplete. Inflammatory burden builds. The auditory nerve operates in an increasingly hostile environment. The brain's compensatory gain climbs. The ringing intensifies, which disrupts sleep further, which allows more inflammation to accumulate, which worsens the ringing. This cycle doesn't interrupt itself, it feeds itself. After 50, deep sleep naturally shortens, which is exactly why this loop becomes harder to escape with age, and exactly why protecting sleep quality isn't just a comfort issue. It is a direct neurological intervention. Every hour of genuine deep sleep is an hour of reduced inflammatory load on the tissue surrounding your auditory pathway. Don't treat sleep like a luxury. Treat it like medicine. This is the connection that almost never comes up, and it may be the most important thing in this entire video. The tiny blood vessels supplying the auditory nerve are among the most delicate in the entire human body. When blood pressure goes unmanaged, when blood sugar runs consistently elevated, when chronic inflammation narrows those microscopic vessels, the nerve tissue receives less oxygen, the myelin thins faster, and the brain's amplification climbs higher. High blood pressure is one of the most consistent risk factors for tinnitus in men over 50. So is poorly managed blood sugar, not because these are ear diseases, but because they're vascular conditions. And the auditory nerve depends entirely on the quality of its blood supply. If you're living with ringing in your ears and you have unaddressed blood pressure or blood sugar issues, that sound may not just be telling you something about your hearing, it may be telling you something about your vessels, about your cardiovascular system, about a body that has been under sustained pressure for longer than you realize. The path toward improvement runs directly through those systems, not around them. Now that you understand the mechanism, let's talk about what you can actually do. First, feed the nerve what it genuinely needs. Magnesium acts as a natural buffer for nerve cells, preventing overstimulation. In the auditory system, deficiency makes nerve cells hyperexcitable, directly contributing to the erratic signaling that produces ringing. Deficiency in adults over 50 is extremely common and chronically underdiagnosed. Vitamin B12 is essential for myelin production and maintenance. The ability to absorb B12 from food decreases with age, and many common medications interfere further. Without sufficient B12, the insulation on the wire degrades faster than it can be repaired. Zinc is present in the cochlea at higher concentrations than almost anywhere else in the body. It protects inner ear cells from oxidative damage. Deficiency has been consistently linked to increased tinnitus severity, and supplementation in deficient individuals has shown measurable clinical improvement. Omega-3 fatty acids maintain the flexibility and resilience of nerve cell membranes throughout the auditory system. None of these require a prescription, but they do require deliberate attention and the recognition that what was adequate at 40 may no longer be adequate at 60. Second, treat sleep as a neurological intervention, not a comfort. Protect the depth and duration of your sleep. Reduce stimulation in the final hour before bed. Understand that you're not just resting, you're running the brain's cleaning system. Every night of quality sleep is a night of reduced inflammatory load on the neural tissue surrounding your auditory pathway. Third, take your vascular health seriously as auditory health. Blood pressure, blood sugar, circulation. These aren't separate conversations from the ringing in your ears, they are the same conversation. The health of the wire depends entirely on the health of the vessels feeding it. I want to say something directly to you. Many men who reach this point feel a specific kind of frustration, not panic, but frustration, because they realize the ringing they've been carrying, sometimes for years, was never just noise. It was information. And for too long, nobody gave them the language to read it. That frustration is valid. But there's something genuinely hopeful here too. The old view was, hair cells are lost, damage is done, the ringing is permanent, accept it and move on. That view is being revised. Tinnitus isn't simply a matter of lost hair cells. It's significantly a matter of how the brain's auditory circuits are responding to degraded input, a matter of inflammation, insulation, amplification, circulation, and nutritional environment. And many of those factors can be meaningfully changed. The brain's auditory circuits can reorganize. Inflammatory burden can be reduced. Deficiencies can be corrected. The vascular environment feeding the auditory nerve can be deliberately improved. This isn't a promise of perfect silence, but it is a genuine foundation for real action, not passive acceptance. Physiologically grounded action taken by a man who finally understands what his body is actually asking for. Tonight, when the house goes quiet and that sound finds you again, try something different. Don't fight it. Don't reach for the remote. Don't file it away until tomorrow. Hear it differently. That ringing is a signal from a wire that needs attention, a wire whose environment can be changed deliberately, intelligently, by someone who now understands exactly what that wire needs. After 50, the body speaks differently than it did at 30. The signals are quieter, subtler, easier to walk past, but they are not less important. If anything, they're more important now. Because at this stage of life, responding early is everything. The men who find real improvement are never the ones who simply waited. They're the ones who heard the signal and decided it was worth responding to. Pay attention to the wire, nourish it, protect it. That's where this begins. And that's exactly where the possibility of real change lives. This is Dr. Reena. If this video gave you something valuable today, share it with a man in your life who needs to hear it. Leave a like so more men can find this information, and subscribe because what we cover next may matter just as much.